I'm Dana Perino, and welcome to The Five. We are learning much more today about yesterday's massacre in California. Here's what we know as of now. The attackers were a married couple, the parents of a 6-month-old baby. The husband, 28-year-old Syed Farook, was a U.S. citizen. We know he traveled to Saudi Arabia last year and returned with his 27-year-old wife, Tashfeen Malik. Farook and Malik both stormed a Christmas luncheon yesterday in San Bernardino, firing 65 to 70 rounds from their rifles, killing 14 and injuring 21. They were later killed themselves in a gun battle with police.
Gunshots. Oh, they're killing that guy. Get inside. Close the gate.
A dozen pipe bombs were found in their home along with materials to make IEDs. But despite all signs pointing to terrorism, the government isn't ready yet to label it so.
At this point in time, it is literally simply too early to ascribe either a motive or to describe their connections to other groups. We do know that the gentleman who's deceased, the man who's deceased, was an employee of the organization having the holiday party. So we don't know, as we stated earlier, whether this is workplace rage or something larger or a combination of both.
Fox's Adam Housley joins us live from San Bernardino with more on this investigation. And Adam, I know you are outside the house. One of the things we don't know a lot about is about the wife. And you've been there today. Any information from neighbors or anyone who possibly knew her?
No, in fact, that's part of the problem that investigators are having. I just spoke to some people very close to this investigation. They say the wife is, quote, a bit of a mystery, and that's making this a bit of a mystery for them. They're getting a lot of information on the husband, as you might imagine, being an American citizen, but they do believe that the wife may have had some sort of training. It makes sense, and the reason why they go with that is that, you know, being in the back of an SUV with an AR-15 and all the, obviously, bombs that were found and devices and weaponry, you know, that just doesn't happen usually with somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. So they're obviously going down that avenue, and it shows that this investigation not only is expanding here in Southern California, but across the country, and for that matter, around the globe. You mentioned them being in Saudi Arabia. The Saudi embassy said that they were there for 9 days, so we know that. Of course, authorities have said Pakistan as well, and the question really remains, did the wife go to other places? Did they get training? I mean, these are all part of the investigative processes. In fact, behind me, the house here in Redlands, which is just down the street from San Bernardino, you can see they're actually going through their car right now, Dana, and that's being really gone through with a fine-tooth comb by the FBI, and just beyond the car is the residence where they found, you know, these motorized cars with basically bombs on them, or little bombs on them, and also pipe bombs and all sorts of materials. You know, when we got tipped off about this last night, I have to be honest, when we were first told that this was being found inside, well before authorities ever admitted it, we were a bit concerned, because it's not something you would expect, obviously, especially when they wouldn't rule out terrorism, but they also wouldn't rule out workplace violence. But it does go to show why they have not ruled out terrorism, why the Joint Terrorism Task Force is involved here, and why this search is really expanding around the globe. Dana?
All right, Kimberly Guilfoyle's got a question for you.
Hi, Adam. Great coverage for us. Thanks very much. A lot of reports coming out, and obviously the FBI taking a close look at this investigation. I think some of the most disturbing aspects were that neighbors saw that unusual kind of activity, people going in and out, quite a few men going in and out of the place. You've got that combined with some phrasing that they said this was like an IED factory with those radio-controlled cars, that type of thing, pipe bombs, some of the stuff like we saw with the Tsarnaev brothers. What else are you hearing that's along those lines? Because it really begs the question, was this just this one isolated incident, or were there other things in play and at work?
Well, I do know this. Last night they said that when the Joint Terrorism Task Force got here, JTF got here, and also other investigative agencies as well, they right away looked into that. I mean, that's obviously a very strong concern for them, especially when they found out that this individual had come, or they'd gone to Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and potentially other places as well. So right away they're looking at, okay, are they part of a larger terror network? Is this even terrorism? I mean, there's a lot of sensitivities there, as you know, and that's one reason why when you talk to investigators, they'll tell you, listen, we've got to make sure we get this right the first time. We don't want to make any mistakes here. Was that meeting or that Christmas party a catalyst? I mean, there's a lot of other things involved, but as they told me, you don't just do this spontaneous. They told us that last night, way before the sheriff or the police chief came out and said that. You know, you don't show up with pipe bombs. You don't put that kind of gear on. You don't have those motorized cars spontaneously because you're upset about work, and that's one reason why they're very concerned here, and rightfully so. But does it mean other people are involved? No. But they are looking at every single avenue. We hear of searches taking place in other parts of this Southern California area. Does it directly connect to this? Again, not sure, and they're not going to tell us all those things because that's part of the investigative process, Kimberly.
Yeah, and looking for known associates as well, people that perhaps could have been accomplices or part of a larger group working in concert together.
All right, Eric Bolling.
Yeah, I'm trying. First of all, Adam, great job as well. I agree. You had some great people to talk to last night on the street. But I'm trying to figure out why we're afraid of calling it terror. It looks like terror, sounds like terror. It bleeds terror. There's reports that there was a radicalization that went on at some point. That's not my question. My question is there any discussion about where these two individuals got the money to pay for all this? Apparently, it cost somewhere around $25,000 to $30,000 this equipment. Kimberly pointed out the pipe bombs, the IEDs, the IED factory, the guns, the ammunition. This guy made $40,000 or $45,000 a year on a civil servant salary. That's a lot of money to be spending on all this equipment. It would beg the question, is there a financial supporter for all this?
Absolutely, Eric. Great question. That's one of the avenues we're going down today. Obviously, yesterday we didn't have time to go through that, and it was also late in the evening. That's the avenue we've been asking questions about today, and that's also the reason why they say this woman's mysterious, because they're going down those same avenues. They can go into the bank accounts now. Obviously, privacy issues are gone. They're dead. So that helps them actually get into some of these bank accounts if that's the case, and follow the money. I mean, that's one of the avenues they have to go down. They have to follow the money. And Eric, I do want to touch really quickly on the idea of not calling this terrorism. I have to tell you, I talked to the investigators and I asked that question too. I said, listen, I mean, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. You know, why you press them like that? And you know, you've got these people with multiple pipe bombs. You have basically a factory in this place behind us. You had pipe bombs with them with extra magazines on their person when they were in the SUV. I mean, you had the horror they caused at the center. I mean, this isn't a spontaneous, and they said that, not me, this isn't a spontaneous attack, but for all of us covering it's obvious as well. And they said the reason why is nowadays the FBI has a very specific and very narrow definition of terrorism. It's the whole semantics things that we're in now, and in the last 6-8 years especially, they're really based on semantics. So that definition of terrorism is very specific, and they want to make sure that it's specifically that definition, because if it's not, then they have a lot of other things they have to deal with on the political side of things. So for them, they want to make sure that they have it exactly. They know, was it a situation where they were planning a terror attack and then this was a catalyst? I mean, there's a lot of variables there that they want to make sure they get correct, Eric.
Thank you.
Right. Gutfeld.
It's the prudence that wasn't shown last week with the other shooting at Planned Parenthood. Everybody was calling that terror immediately. And it's interesting that they won't rule out workplace violence. I'm wondering if they're going to rule out climate change, since they believe that climate change leads to terror. Who knows? Adam, I was wondering about this dispute. Was that dispute basically, it sounds to me like a red herring, that it could allow this guy to leave early, and it looks normal that he's leaving?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, the investigators and a lot of people involved in this case at the lower levels, Eric, are just as frustrated about what happens in other investigations in this one as you guys are. I mean, they want to be able to say certain things in a certain way, but because, you know, it has to go up the chain of command and they have to follow, obviously, rules because of possible mistakes and all that kind of stuff, they're just as frustrated in a lot of cases, just so you know. As for the red herring, it very well could be, because I know behind the scenes that the federal agents were a little upset with the police department and the police chief because, for example, the last press conference last night, he didn't even toss to them to comment on anything, which he was supposed to do, and he was really hanging it on this supposed argument. But then there are also witnesses say there was no argument at all. He was there, as they put, he cased the place, even though he knew what he meant. He went there to kind of see the place out, sat down for a while, and then left. Some insisting that it could be, that he was looking for, ensuring it was a soft target. Others say that there was a confrontation. It really comes down to people have different, you know, you and I both see an accident, we're going to see it a different way. So the federal agents aren't sold at all that there was some sort of disagreement, just so you know.
All right, Juan Williams.
Adam, I was wondering about the fact that you had this GoPro camera, they had the armored vest. I mean, they had so many of these kinds of preparations for a serious attack. I'm told now there was no GoPro camera. But it just struck me, the question is, when did they make these purchases? When did they get these items? Do we know?
Well, that's one thing they can track. They won't tell us, obviously. We know the neighbors around here say the apartment this stuff was coming into is right there, right over my shoulder, over that white car, Ron, where you'll see the actual window blown out or knocked out, and you'll see the investigative process in the car right in front of it. As for the tactical vests, I mean, as you know, when you see things from a distance, it might look like there's armor on them, and then when you get up close, you realize they're just a tactical vest. There's no armor. That's an easy thing to understand. There's still honestly, some discrepancy about whether or not there were GoPros or cameras there. As you know, in situations like this, they had a lot of stuff in that truck. They pulled out a lot of stuff out of that shot-up SUV, and I still have people insisting that there were. That's a situation where does it really matter? We don't know. It could mean nothing. So at this point, we're going to focus on what the things we do know and what do mean things, and that is the fact they had massive weaponry. Juan, as you talked about, they got this stuff from somewhere, as Eric suggested. Where did they get the money? And who do they know? Who else did they contact? Where did they get the weapons? They obviously bought the weapons legal, but remember, while the weapons were legal, the clips were not legal. In California, you only can have a 10 clip, and you have to have a special button on it. Those were 30 clips, no button. So while they had some things that were legal, they had obviously stuff that weren't legal, and they obviously weren't worried about laws when they were building pipe bombs. So there are a lot of, and then you have the possible international connections. So there's a lot of avenues that have to go down here in a very short time. And remember, we're just basically 24 hours away. It was a little more than that from when all this happened.
But Adam, you said that in fact California has strict gun control laws, but they were in violation of some of them. Do we know when the guns were purchased?
We do, and that's part of the investigative processes today. We're actually working on that, as you know. There's a lot of stuff we're trying to work on as well. There's some suggestion where the guns were purchased and when and times and that kind of thing. We're trying to basically get all that out. All different agencies are reporting a lot of different things. Some agencies were saying they weren't wearing masks. They were wearing masks. I can tell you that what stuff we've reported has all pretty much come true. And as for where the guns are purchased, we're just not ready to say that yet because we don't know it yet for sure. But we were told by authorities those two weapons, at least the ARs and the pistols, we believe, were bought legally. But obviously, I don't know how much, when it comes to how many rounds you're allowed to have, I don't know what that law is, honestly, but I do know the clips were illegal.
All right. Adam, thank you so much. We'll continue to watch your excellent coverage.